Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adi, and today I have another team report, this time from the Milan special event, and I am joined by another top player. I am joined by Banfox. How are you doing?
Hi, thank you. Really happy to be on your channel. I'm Andrea Olia and I'm known as Banfox, and I managed to get a top 4 Milan special with Slowbro.
Yeah, you managed to use Slowbro, which is a really unique choice. But first, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
So I started playing back in 2018 after randomly stumbling upon after stumbling upon the Nike live stream from Pokemon, and I had no idea VGG existed before that. And I actually really loved it because while just playing around, I always preferred double battles than singles. And so discovering the fact that there was an official format in that, I decided to play it. And like Serapis team and seeing interactions between items and abilities with Drip, Blim, and Tapulele really inspired me a lot. And so after that, I started playing, but mainly online as I was living in Switzerland back then, and there were no locals or stuff like that around me. And when I moved in Milan, where I initially lived, I could start doing tournaments again, but COVID happened. So basically, I did just a couple of locals. And in the previous formats, like in previous World Cup. And then I did some results online, and I decided to try and get my world invite in this short amount of time. I just did the European International and Milan, and managed to get it with just two major events. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's a really, really impressive set of results in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
Of course, finishing all the way to a top four finish at I think it was like 280 players at the Milan special event. Is that right?
Yeah, and there was also like a high level of players.
Hmm.
It was really hard to do. And I also was the last 8-0 in Swiss.
I know some Italian players were just calling this like the Italian national championships. That's how seriously everyone was taking it.
Yeah.
Potentially the last event before the World Championships if you weren't traveling to the North American
Yeah,
Internet.
it's the
So,
last European event, so it felt really great to do well.
mhm. Yeah. So, talk me through what your thought process was in building this team.
Yeah, sure. So basically, in Frankfurt, I brought a Zesian Yveltal team with a Life Orb variant of Yveltal, way more offensive. And I felt good with it, but then the meta evolved with more variants of Life Orb Kyogre and Assault Vest Kyogre, which were very annoying for my team, so I had to stop using it. I tried to use those theme and even some other compositions, but I never found myself too well with it. Normally, I perform way better with team I just built. So I decided to try Yveltal again as I found myself well with it. And I decided to give a shot to Evildon, as I also like playing Groudon and Sun. And my main problem was the Kali Spike matchup. And I just didn't feel confident bringing Evildon with such bad matchups into Kyurem and Kali Ice. And I think I faced on Ladder Showdown one day a team with Tornassus, Slowbro, Amnesia. And I, I managed to beat it, and it didn't feel too strong because it was just too passive and too exposed to crits. But the Slowbro itself remained in my mind for a couple of days, and then I decided to try Nivildon because I thought it could perform well, as we saw it already with Bronze on Iron Defense Body Press. But Slowbro had a different type, different abilities, and stable recovery with Slack Off, so I thought it could perform better and also do better versus Reshiram and Palkia, resisting both and not and also Kyurem, as Kyurem can just ignore Levitate. And it did well, and it fixed those situations a bit, and also it improved a lot versus Zacian Ogre with Tornadoes, as you resist both Zacian and Kyogre, and they normally have just one grass type to deal with you, so you can work around that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know that I talked to Philip about his team from Liverpool, which of
Yeah.
course featured the Bronze Song, like you mentioned. And I was really skeptical of that just because it felt like Palkia could power through that, or more Reshiram nowadays. But yeah, Slowbro is really cool because of how it interacts with those Pokemon and how it really does wall those dragons. Um, And I guess tell me about the moveset for the Slowbro and what it does exactly.
Yeah. So this moveset is Trick Room because I wanted to also have a slow mode with Trick Room, and it has Iron Defense Body Press as a way to stall out Kali Ice and tank damage a bit better, and also build up his damage output. And Zlakov simply as a recovery option after stacking Max Quake's boost and Iron Defense as it becomes hard to kill. Spread-wise, it's mainly specially bulky to overcome a bit his lack of special defense compared to defense, as his defense is 110 base, which is already high. And with that, I think it can leave basically max save stream life orb from Charizard Under Sun, and it can also leave freeze dry from Curem Modest Life Orb and max whirlwind from Modest Curem Life Orb, which was great. And that's mainly about it. Also, 3-hit KO from Water Spout and 3-hit KO from Play Rough at +0. So it's really tanky. The Wakamberry item was a choice I made for a team similar to Escolins with Life Orb Kyogre with Max Lightning plus Tornadoes. So it could leave the double up. But in the end, and it was in testing also useful versus some Tundra, Seleki, and Zapdos. But in the end, in the tournament, no one ever activated it. So I basically played an itemless Slowbro. And thinking back in building process, I think goggles might be better on Slowbro because I mainly chose it to make the Kali Ice Palkia matchup a bit simpler, but they are often paired with Among Us, which is still a bit annoying in the Trick Room mode. So that should fix it even more. And so I was thinking about making that change post Milan. It didn't really affect my Milan run, but I think it's a good change to make in the future.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And do you want to talk me through the other Pokemon in the team, why they're there, and what they do?
Yeah, so the rest of the team is basically a standard Evildon. I think those five are really solid and really synergic and gives you a lot of options. And Zlober is just the final glow piece with which fixes the last matchups. And Venusaur is just a Sash Venusaur. It's like best items. It's really consistent. Initially, I had Earth Power and Protector with Weather Ball and Helping Hand. I decided to go with Weather Ball because it was very useful versus Among Us, Rillaboom, and Kartana. And then I decided to move to Helping Hand because many expect Protect, and even if they know about Helping Hand, just leading Regieleki Venusaur gives me a lot of option where I can Volt Switch Sleep Powder or Helping Hand Max Lightning. And also because I tend to max Eleki a lot, even by leading Eleki Venusaur, if I max Lightning, then Sleep Powder can hit most of the Pokemons. Weather Ball would be normal type, and the Leaf Storm is good, but you drop yourself. So I could feel a bit inconsistent with Venusaur under electric terrain, while with having Helping Hand, I could always just click Helping Hand, Max Lightning, and do a ton of damage into every Pokemon. And the Groudon is mainly very bulky to be 3-hit KO from Beam of Blade with Citrus Berry, and leave Kyogre Max Geyser and stuff like that without the Assault Vest. And I have a bit of speed to try and speed other Groudons and similar speed tier Pokemons. The attack is enough to do Tweet KO with Precipice on Bulkless Kyogre, and I decided to go with a Rock Tomb even if I'm Sword Dance rather than Stone Edge or Rock Slide, because in the end the damage is comparable to Rock Slide on a single target, and I don't like Stone Edge high missing chance. And I also like a lot Rock Tomb speed dropping to keep Pokemon with Max Airstream in check. And Yveltal is just really bulky. I have very little special attack investment, but it's mainly as a support option with Snarl and Full Play. And Sucker Punch was very useful, The speed is to a speed current, so I can snarl even before the timid version. And the rest is just to optimize bulk. For example, it leaves a +0 player up from Zesian, and it leaves Max Geyser from Kyogre Life Orb, and stuff like that. And Incineroar is just a physical bulky Incineroar made with minus speed to underspeed at their Incineroars, but still being faster than max speed Kaliais, and with enough special attack investment to break the sub from Zacian.
Oh, cool. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if they are really, really bulky, they have a role to still take the Burning Jealousy, but normally the less bulky variant run substitute, so it was very useful.
Yeah, that's really creative. I would never have thought of that.
Yeah, I basically was inspired by Panji on that, who did a similar thing in the original he won. He told me, so I decided to try that, and it was really useful.
Yeah. And so I guess that's a really good overview of the team. We've seen again, we've seen this sort of 5 Pokemon on Evil Dawn quite a bit. We saw it, I believe, the same 5 on Phillips' team at Liverpool. We saw, I believe, Joe ran those at European Internets and got top cut there. So that's sort of standardized. Slowbro.
Joe had Magnet Lake in Life Orb Yveltal with a Solvus Caradon, but the 5 are always those. Yeah, I don't really like Magnet Lake because it either is modest and a bit slower, or it lacks a bit of damage, and it isn't even Sesh. So I went for a Solvus on Yveltal to mainly run Life Orb Lake. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I felt that Magnet Elky, when I was testing his team, was very underwhelming. And I think it feels like it needs the Life Orb, or it needs a Focus Sash, or like an Assault Vest even potentially.
Yeah,
I know we've seen a little bit of that. But Magnet just feels so underwhelming to me. But yeah, I think this team, those core 5 are really cool because they have such defensive synergy and also have a lot of offensive threats, a lot of ways to trade damage. And then Slowbro really seems like it rounds out the team extremely well. But do you want to talk me through how you approach some of the matchups that you expected to face going into the tournament?
Yeah, so basically when I went to Frankfurt, I expected a lot of Groudon, Lunala, Groudon, Zacian, and stuff like that. So I had a Rotomite and prepped mainly for that, and it worked. While here I expected way more Zacian Kyogre and Zacian Kalido. In fact, I think I faced 0 Groudon in my run, which is hard to believe, but that happened. And I faced like 7 or 8 Zacian Kyogres and a couple of Zacian Kalidos. And the rest were Zacian Yveltal and Kali Ice Reshiram. And so yeah, I wanted to cover the Zacian Kyogre matchup, and I mainly have 2 modes against it. I can go with Leaky Venusaur, or even just have Snarl Yveltal based on their team, or even go with Slowbro Trick Room with Incineroar, Slowbro, Groudon, Yveltal. And Slowbro was amazing because in all my run, I always brought it like just 1 game out of 2 in my sets, as it will put such pressure that my opponent had to completely change lead and plans versus it after 1 game and expose themselves to other Pokemons like Venusaur or Lakey. For example, I went in stream round 6 versus Tornogard Zacian, and I led game 1 in Incineroar Slowbro, stacked up boost with Slowbro, and he couldn't touch me. He had just not very effective moves with both Kyogre, Zacian, and Landorus didn't do much, and neither in DD. And I read them going Kyogre Kartana game 2. I didn't even bring Slowbro, just went with Venusaur and won with it. So that felt like a very solid option, as having both a very offensive one and a slow-paced option. And so yeah, I wanted to have double mode, trick room mode and offensive mode, and yeah, I think Slowbro was a good call, especially considering how many Zacian Kyogre I faced. And I faced 3 of the French Rain variant, and Slowbro was really solid also against that team. as Tundros can't taunt it thanks to Oblivious. I can set up Trick Room easily, and also if they don't bring instead Tundros, Venusaur and Lakey are really solid also.
Yeah, makes sense. It's interesting that you said you didn't face any Groudon, because I think the team that I saw that stood out to me the most at the tournament was Lunadon. I know that like there were a bunch of them in top
I
32.
would have been
Um,
happy to face a Lunadon with
right.
Assault Festival, but I faced zero. So there's that.
Mhm. Yeah. And then I guess I still got to ask because it's still relevant.
Sure.
How did you feel about your Rinya Sun matchup?
So I felt decent enough because Eleki Venusaur are a threat to it. Thunderbolt Lifer can just straight up one-hit KO Charizard Dynamax, and Sleep Powder is an option versus them. Venusaur can also Dynamax. And this means they're normally forced to go to lead Grimmsnarl, or they just lose to Eleki Venusaur, which I do bring from at least one game. And the point is, if they lead Grimmsnarl, even like Grimmsnarl Charizard or Grimmsnarl whatever, they do lose from a Slowbro lead because they don't really bring Gastrodon in this matchup, as there is Venusaur and it's already a threat. As if I lead Incineroar Slowbro and they lead, for example, Grimmsnarl Charizard, even if they switch in a Groudon into Grimmsnarl, the Slowbro leaves a Max Airstream Life Orb from Charizard, and so I can just parting shot onto Charizard, set up Trick Room, bring in Groudon, threaten them with a Max Rockfall, Slack off to heal, and they may not even be able to set up dots. And I can stack up my boost on Slowbro, and then Slowbro beats Groudon, beats Zacian, and Grimmsnarl doesn't touch it. So there are better matchups, but it's still a really solid one.
Hmm. Yeah, makes sense. And I guess, are there any other matchups that we're forgetting about that you had game plans for going into the tournament?
So this and Calido was a bit tricky. I won versus anyone that I faced because Yveltal is really good there. But it can be a bit tricky if they like lead Zixian Calido with Life Orb Tundros. There may be a bit of 50-50s on who protects and who doesn't, who switches and stuff like that. But normally you have the upper end because you can lead the Lakey Venusaur, you can also lead the Lakey Veltal, and so you have a lot of options. Also, Incineroar Burning Jealousy is really solid into that matchup. And another thing is I faced many variants with Whimsicott over Rillaboom as well, and those are a bit harder as Eleki is less effective there, and otherwise it's really good. And versus those team, I also brought Slowbro at least one game. Like versus one guy, I brought it game 2, and versus another one, I brought it game 1. As they normally go with Whimsicott to stop Lakey, set up Tailwind, then they have an eject button to switch out. But with Slowbro setting up Trick Room, you mess them up and then they can't do anything. So that scares them from bringing Whimsicott again in a possible game 2. They just leave it at home and you can bring in a Lakey Valtal and do the standard plan. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so, Tom, talk to me about your tournament run in one or two notable games that you played.
Okay, so I think one of my most notable games was the top 8. I was versus my friend Davide Cateruccio, known as Dinamo. So he was using French Rain, and we faced round 9. I went 8-0. The last round, I didn't play too seriously. I just mashed buttons. I didn't care too much on that moment. I was just happy with my 8-0. So I lost 2-0 in the 9th round, and we faced again in top 8. We both needed a top 4 for our world invitation, so it was a really important match, and there was a crowd watching us playing, and we also played against each other in Swiss, so we did have a bit of an idea on how to play it. Game 1, I went with Lakey Venusaur because he never brought Tundros in Swiss, and he did bring Tundros game 1, but I read him going for Harry Impulse because I showed him helping end Max Lightning plus helping end. So I just read him doing that, went with Volswitch, Sleep Powder, brought in Gradon, and started doing Sword Dance and stuff like that. And I won through Sleep Powder. And game 2, I went with Incineroar, Slowbro, Groudon, Yveltal, which is normally my game 1 plan versus a normal French rain player because they tend to lead Zacian Tundras, game 1 at least. And basically he led Incineroar, Kartana, and turn 1 I went for a parting shot plus a switch out of Slowbro for Yveltal. He went for fake out on Incineroar plus Leaf Blade on Slowbro, which hit the Yveltal. And then I had a lot of pressure because I went for Znar plus Burning Jealousy, and he had no switch in on that. He had to remove Kartana, bringing Kyogre, but he took a Snarl and went a -1 and took a cheap damage. And he went with Parting Shot with Incineroar, but by being slower with my Incineroar, I managed to burn his Zacian, and then I could set up the Slowbro and win with it, even though he had Darkest Lariat on his Incineroar. He had to max Incineroar, try some max Darkness, but it didn't work out. In the end, he also got like a crit with Leaf Blade on Slowbro as soon as Trick Room ended, and the Sacred Sword crit on Incineroar, but I managed to leave it, luckily enough. So it was a really intense match.
Yeah, I mean, that just goes to show you how bulky Slowbro is, even when the boosts are nullified.
Yeah.
And then I guess another match that I was looking through. You sent me all the matchups you played,
Yep.
and it sounds like you played a Calyrex Ice in top 16, which is obviously normally the scariest matchup for
Yeah,
Groudon
it is.
Eviltal. Tell me about your top
So
16 match.
the problem is, I did test Kali Ice and Slowbro did patch it, but I didn't think about giving goggles to Slowbro, so Among Us would still be annoying. And like this version especially is not the most common Kali Ice team either, and it was really hard to prep. I just did some matches the night before with my friends to try it out, but they had Among Us, and the Mimikyu, I didn't have mean to stop Trick Room. It was also safety goggles, so I couldn't go with Sleep Powder. And Incineroar was edged button, so I had to pay attention when I tried to attack Among Us. And Among Us had both Spore and Hex, which could threaten Slowbro. And yeah, then there is the weakness policy Kali Ice and the standard Soul Vest Reshiram. So basically, in my testing, if they were to go with the Among Us, I had to bring a Lakey over Groudon to win and just basically click Max Lightning, dish out damage, and then win in a late game with Slowbro. But from what I heard around, my opponent was really scared by Slowbro. He thought his matchup was terrible, and so did the creator of the team because they talked together and he told him they just lost to Slowbro. But basically, in my testing, what happened would be that they would go for Will-O-Wisp on Slowbro, which normally it isn't even in a Kali Palkia team with Porygon 2, as there is no Mimikyu. And then they could Rage Powder with Among Us, and I couldn't really touch Kali Ice with like a non-very effective Burn Body Press on Among Us. And but he brought a Reshiram over Among Us, which I expected him to do game 1, and heard he was scared, so I thought he would go with that. I brought Incineroar, Groudon, Yveltal, and Slowbro as my 4 mons, and it worked both game 1 and game 2. If you were to bring an Among Us, I would have had to adapt with Lakey, which could work, and it worked in testing, but wasn't amazing. So that's mainly why I wanted to change the goggles, as it makes this matchup way easier.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, and then, of course, you did end up losing in top 4 to the eventual winner, Pado.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell me about that matchup?
Yeah, so I want to start by saying that Pado is an amazing player, and he definitely deserved the win. He played way better. I'm not happy about how he played that match. That match personally, I think I could have done way better. But I'm still happy with my run because I got my invitation, and that was what I was looking for. But basically, what happened is that the previous day. I was told that his Kyogre was Life Orb rather than Assault Vest, and that his Jason was 3 attack with Play Rough. So I basically had wrong information on his team, and I played according to those informations. For example, game one, I switched Yveltal turn one for Incineroar, where plus a Volt switch into Yveltal, where if I knew he didn't have play rough, I could just Volt switch into Incineroar plus a Snarl in front of Moltres Zacian. And even then, I think I could have still won game one without the Fiery Wrath -1 crit plus Miss of Precipice. But to be fair, the miss is totally, it can totally happen because there was the 20% flinch chance and 50% miss chance. But basically, if it didn't happen, I could have OK'd the Kyogre with Max Lightning and then have a 2 with V1 against Incineroar or Porygon 2. So I think I could have still won game one, but it happens. It's a game, so totally fine. And game two, he led the Kyogre Zacian. I led Eleki Incineroar. I knew he would double into Eleki, and because I didn't even because of the crit and miss game one, I didn't even have the chance to see that his Kyogre was actually Assault Vest and not Life Orb. He gave me a 4-0, so I still thought his Kyogre was Life Orb. I went for a Volt Switch and decided to sack Groudon to go for a Burning Jealousy on Zacian, mainly because even if it's strange to sack Groudon like that, I thought that by burning Zacian and bringing it a +0, after the Volt Switch chip, the Dynamax Life or Kyogre will be in max lightning range, and he will have no way to kill my Aleki and no way to stop it on his Dynamax, and I could just run through his team with that. Unfortunately, it was Assault Vest, so the damage calc didn't work out. It will leave a max lightning, so I had to bring out Incineroar, Volt Switch again, and suck Incineroar. So the plan wasn't a good one, and I still had a chance, but he also had Darkest Lariat on Incineroar, which I didn't expect, considering he had already full play on Porygon 2 and Fiery Wrath on to the Moltres, plus a Shadow Sneak as coverage on the Shedinja. So basically, I was with almost full HP Aleki in Trick Room against Incineroar Porygon 2 under rain. I didn't think I was going to take a lot of damage, as Zacian was also burned, but the Darkest Lariat with Dark Aura did like 60-70% on Dynamax Aleki. So that basically meant I lost. If he had just Flare Blitz, maybe I could have won, but I'm not sure about that. But yeah, basically, I'm not happy how I played because I had wrong informations and I played according to them. And I think I could have played better if I had known the information. But again, Pado played amazingly, deserved the win. I like after seeing it was a Solfest, I was thinking about going Galeki Venusaur game 3 because if he were to lead Moltres, I would have like helping and Max Lightning to kill it. And if he were to lead Assault Vest Kyogre, could just Volt Switch plus Sleep Powder. So I would have liked to have the opportunity to play game 3 mainly.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. But hopefully you get the run back at the World Championships in London.
Hopefully,
That and I mean, congratulations on
thank you.
qualifying. That's a huge accomplishment, especially again. You said 2 events. You got day 2 at the European Internets, and then top 4 of this event. That is
Yep. Plus one
absolutely
online
insane.
international, one online EC, and that's it. So 300 exactly.
Yeah. And so those are all the questions that I have. Did you have any final words or shout outs that you want to give?
Yeah, I want to shout out my group of friends who had me practice in preparation to Milan. So 45 Mice, Atmosphere, Willy, and Giovanni, who is also known as Polar Bear. They helped me the most. And then also Philip and my friends Pyrus and Sora helped me occasionally. And also Meluka, who helped me with the final touches to the team. He made me notice, for example, that when doing my Velta calcs, I mistakenly did them on normal QREM, the one without fusion. So I thought I lived max Airsom, but I didn't. So I had to buff my speed to outspeed the volatile QREM to improve the matchup. So thanks to him for noticing, as I did like 2 win a box side events, and where you could win a box of cards. and I won both of them. And the second one was against a Cure My Dragon in finals, with Assault Vest Dragon, Life of Curem plus Thasian in DD, which shouldn't be really easy for Evil Zone, but Slowbro allowed me to win. So that felt great.
Damn, that's also crazy. That
Yeah.
sounds like an awful matchup. Slowbro really sounds like it puts in so much work on this team.
Yeah. I brought it like 5 or 6 rounds out of Swiss, won all of them, and it won me both the top 16 and top 8. So it was definitely the call for the tournament run.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to try out Slowbro yourself, the rental code is on screen right now. The paste will be in the description down below. I really encourage you to try it out because I think Evil Dawn is one of the most fun archetypes to play personally, and this really puts it, makes it in contention in the metagame, whereas I think it was a little weak to some of the more common threats without the Slowbro.
I was like the only Evil Zone in top 64, and there were just 2 Evaltal in top 64, me and I think Niels Dunlop with Evil Ogre. I think they were the only 2 Evaltals. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So again, congratulations on your incredible run. And thank you so much for coming on the channel.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course, anytime. And yeah, thank you all for watching. And until next time, I will see you all later.
See ya.